Gwen Mallory had only been attending Oakhaven Central Academy for precisely 62 days when Beatrice B. Shumway first sent her crashing into a supply closet. Gwen was 5'7", sporting raven hair that reflected the dull classroom lights, almost appearing blue from some angles. She favored outlet store dresses and her mother's old Rosie Riveter work shirts, which draped loosely over her slender frame. What B and her clique failed to notice were the faint chalk dust stains ingrained in Gwen's fingertips from years of drawing and sculpting in her attic studio, or the slight flattening on her thumb from pressing clay. Gwen's family had moved to Oakhaven following her mother's retirement from the Air Force. Chief Master Sergeant Patricia Mallory now worked second shift as a security guard at the local airplane factory and slept during the late morning and early afternoon. Gwen's father had passed away from a long illness several years prior, leaving mother and daughter to face life as a solid duo. Patricia had taught Gwen self-defense techniques not because she expected her to use them, but because she couldn't always be present to safeguard her. Keep a low profile until graduation, she'd advised her on the first day at Oakhaven. Choose your battles wisely. However, Gwen's battles seemed determined to find her. Beatrice Shumway governed her senior year through a blend of family status, honed meanness, and two devoted allies, Crystal Dubois and Tiffany Park. Beatrice's mother oversaw 4 real estate firms across the Tri-County area, meaning Beatrice drove a different luxury SUV to school each week and never gave consequences a second thought. Her chestnut hair received balayage treatments every 7 weeks, and her closet held outfits worth more than Gwen's mother earned in 3 months. The harassment began subtly. Beatrice would accidentally spill her iced tea on Gwen's sketchbook in art class, destroying hours of work. She'd make pointed remarks about Gwen's wardrobe during history seminars. She'd arrange lab partners specifically to exclude Gwen, then complain to Mr. Abernathy about Gwen's lack of collaboration. "She smells like turpentine," Gwen overheard Beatrice telling Crystal near the cafeteria's beverage bar on a Friday in September. Probably because her mum's some kind of aircraft mechanic. Gwen's mother wasn't an aircraft mechanic. She'd been a survival training instructor for the Air Force before a training accident in Nevada damaged the nerves in her right hand and left her with persistent tremors. But Gwen didn't correct them. Patricia had instilled in her that sometimes the wisest course of action was no action at all. The torment amplified in October. Beatrice uncovered Gwen's online art portfolio and started posting comments on every piece. "Is this supposed to be art?" appeared beneath a charcoal sketch of Gwen's cat. "Good luck getting into art school," showed up below a photo Gwen had shared after winning a local art competition. Gwen deleted the comments and restricted her account access, but screenshots were quickly shared through group messages. Classmates she'd never interacted with began snickering as she passed by. Someone established a fake Twitter account called Oakhaven Art Fail that posted daily critiques of Gwen's artwork, paired with sarcastic commentary about her technique. The school's zero-tolerance policy mandated documentation of 5 separate incidents before the administration could intervene. Gwen reported the online abuse to her guidance counselor, Mr. Henderson, who promised to look into it, but explained that off-campus cyberbullying occupied a legal gray area unless explicit threats were communicated. "Have they threatened you with physical harm?" Mr. Henderson inquired during their meeting in early October. "Not exactly," Gwen conceded. "Then we'll monitor the situation and see if it escalates further." It escalated. The day before Halloween break, Gwen was departing the theater after Stagecraft Club practice when she encountered Beatrice, Crystal, and Tiffany lingering in the loading dock. The loading dock floors were worn concrete, installed in the 1970s, when accessibility standards were more suggestion than obligation. Students typically utilized the main entrance, but Stagecraft members often cut through the loading dock to reach the back parking lot. Well, Beatrice said, obstructing Gwen's path. "If it isn't our little starving artist." Gwen attempted to navigate around them, but Crystal shifted to block her. The loading dock was confined, with barely enough space for two people to maneuver comfortably. The scent of dust and old wood hung in the air. "We need to talk," Tiffany stated, although her voice lacked Beatrice's usual confidence. Tiffany had always been the less enthusiastic participant in their schemes. "I'm trying to leave," Gwen replied. She maintained her composure, recalling her mother's advice about not betraying fear. "You're trying to undermine my popularity," Beatrice snapped back, "spreading rumors to Mr. Abernathy about my lack of talent. I never mentioned your name. Don't play dumb. You think we don't know what you're doing, trying to get us suspended because you can't handle a little critique." Gwen felt her phone vibrate in her jacket pocket. Probably her mother, texting that she was leaving work early to pick her up. If she could stall for 7 minutes, she'd be here. "Look," Gwen said, "I don't want any trouble. Can we just pretend this never happened?" "Too late for that," Beatrice said. She edged closer, forcing Gwen back toward the edge of the dock. "You already made this our problem." "Beatrice, maybe we should—" Tiffany began. "Shut up," Crystal interrupted. "She needs to learn a lesson." Gwen felt the edge of the loading dock behind her heel. The dock dropped 4 feet to the parking lot below, where it connected to the theater department's prop storage area. During the day, the area teemed with activity, but after school, it was deserted except for the occasional security guard. "Learn what?" Gwen asked. "That actions have consequences," Beatrice said. "You want to whine to counselors about online bullying? Let me show you what real harassment looks like." Beatrice shoved Gwen forcefully in the chest with both hands. Gwen had been trained for this. Her mother had devoted countless hours teaching her how to breakfall, how to redirect force, how to minimize impact. But training scenarios didn't account for concrete loading docks at awkward angles, or the way a portfolio filled with heavy art supplies could throw off your balance at precisely the wrong moment. Gwen's right foot slipped off the edge. She twisted, trying to grab onto the metal beam, but the old beam was loose and rusted, offering little resistance. She tumbled backward, her left shoulder striking the edge of the dock, her head hitting the concrete with a sickening thud. Her right arm became trapped under her body on the ground with a sound like splintering wood. She came to rest in the parking lot, art supplies scattered around her like fallen leaves. The air smelled of gasoline and damp asphalt. The silence stretched for maybe 4 seconds. "Oh crap," Crystal whispered. "Gwen?" Tiffany called down. "Gwen, are you okay?" Gwen tried to respond, but when she opened her mouth, only a gasp escaped. Her right arm was bent at an angle that arms were never meant to bend. Her left ankle throbbed with searing pain. Something sticky trickled down the side of her face. "We need to get help," Tiffany said. "No," Beatrice snapped. "We need to leave, right now." "She's seriously hurt." She fell off the dock. Accidents happen all the time. "Beatrice, her arm, is not our problem. She tripped. We weren't even here." Gwen heard footsteps receding into the theater. She attempted to move, but the movement sent shards of agony through her right side. Her vision blurred in and out of focus. She fumbled for her phone with her left hand, but it had skittered under a pile of sketches during the fall. Gwen lay on the cold concrete for 29 minutes before Mrs. Johnson, the night watchwoman, discovered her. The ambulance ride was a chaotic blend of flashing lights and questions Gwen couldn't answer clearly. Her mother met them at Oak Haven Memorial Hospital, still wearing her work uniform and smelling faintly of jet fuel and machinery lubricant. When she saw Gwen on the gurney, her face cycled through several emotions before settling into the controlled strength she'd perfected during 20 years in the Air Force. The damage assessment required 5 hours, compound fracture of the right ulna, dislocated elbow, moderate concussion, severe contusions along her ribs and back, and a sprain in her left ankle. The doctors said she was fortunate the head injury wasn't more severe. "How did this happen?" Patricia asked during the quiet moments between nurses checking vitals. Gwen recounted the loading dock, about slipping, about the beam giving way. She didn't mention Beatrice or the shoving. Not yet. The school called, Patricia said. They're reviewing accessibility standards for the loading dock. Apparently that beam's been unstable for months. Gwen spent 6 days in the hospital and returned home the day after Halloween with her right arm in a cast from fingers to shoulder, a walking cast on her left foot, and strict orders to abstain from physical activity for at least 10 weeks. The concussion left her with migraines that made drawing difficult, which meant she'd have to rely on voice-to-text software and note-taking assistance to keep up with her classes. Patricia took family leave from the airplane factory to care for her, which meant their already stretched finances became even tighter. The hospital bills would take years to pay off, even with her military insurance covering most of the costs. "We'll manage somehow," she assured Gwen when she apologized for the burden. "That's what families are for." During her recovery, Gwen had ample time to contemplate. She replayed the moment at the edge of the loading dock repeatedly, analyzing Beatrice's words, Crystal's positioning, Tiffany's hesitation. The more she dwelled on it, the more enraged she became. Not simply enraged about the shove, but enraged about everything. The weeks of torment, the online attacks, the way Beatrice had carefully calculated every action to remain just inside the boundaries of what the school considered actionable, the way she'd simply walked away while Gwen lay injured in the parking lot. Most of all, Gwen was enraged about her mother working extra shifts to cover medical expenses for injuries that weren't her daughter's fault. In her 4th week of recovery, Gwen asked Patricia to teach her more advanced self-defense techniques. "Your arm is still healing," she pointed out. "My left arm works fine." "Gwen, I know you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm ready." Patricia studied her daughter's face for a long moment. She'd seen that expression before, in the eyes of soldiers returning from combat. It was the look of someone who'd resolved that being a target was no longer acceptable. "Okay," she said finally, "but we do this right. No shortcuts, no recklessness. And you don't use any of this unless you absolutely have to." "Understood." "I mean it, Gwen. Violence is a last resort, not a first response." "I know." They started with footwork, since Gwen could practice movement patterns without placing stress on her healing bones. Patricia had converted their attic into a basic art studio years ago, with drawing tables, easels, and clay modeling stands covering the wooden floor. During Gwen's recovery, it became their dojo. "Fighting isn't about being strong," Patricia explained during their first lesson. "It's about being strategic. You observe your opponent, you exploit weaknesses, you create opportunities." Gwen learned to deliver precise strikes with her left hand while protecting her injured right arm. She practiced kicks with her good leg while maintaining balance despite the walking cast. Most importantly, she learned to think defensively. "3 opponents is a challenge," Patricia told her. "But 3 opponents who aren't expecting resistance, that's an advantage." By Thanksgiving break, Gwen's cast had been replaced with a removable splint, and the walking cast was gone. The concussion symptoms had mostly subsided. Physically, she was recovering well. Mentally, she was planning. The school's investigation into her accident had concluded that the unstable beam was an infrastructure issue, not a safety violation. The beam was repaired, warning signs were posted about reporting maintenance concerns, and life at Oakhaven Central returned to normal. Except Gwen's normal had changed. She returned to school in January with her arm still in a splint, but otherwise appearing recovered. Beatrice and her friends had expected Gwen to transfer schools or at least keep her head down. Instead, Gwen seemed almost self-assured, making eye contact in hallways and contributing to class discussions. "Look who's back," Beatrice said on Gwen's first day back, ambushing her near the art supply room. "How's the arm?" "Getting stronger every day," Gwen replied. Something in her tone made Beatrice recoil slightly. "Good. Maybe next time you'll watch where you're going." "Oh, I'll definitely be more aware of who's behind me on loading docks." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just general safety advice. For 3 weeks, Gwen played the role of a recovering victim. She attended physical therapy appointments, used her injury as an excuse to avoid gym class, and appeared to pose no threat to anyone. But she was observing, memorizing patterns, identifying weaknesses. Beatrice's routine was predictable. Every Monday and Wednesday, she stayed after school for student government meetings in the conference room near the guidance office. The meetings typically concluded around 4:45, after which Beatrice would stop by her locker, then cut through the computer lab to reach the parking lot where Crystal would be waiting in her car. Tiffany had been acting differently since Gwen's fall. She avoided eye contact in hallways and appeared uneasy during Beatrice's customary harassment campaigns. Gwen suspected Tiffany was grappling with guilt, which meant she might not be fully committed to supporting Beatrice if trouble erupted. On the last Wednesday in January, Gwen put her plan into motion. She waited in the computer lab until 4:40, positioned at a workstation near the back exit. At precisely 4:46, Beatrice strolled through the lab's main entrance, speaking loudly into her phone about weekend plans. She was alone. Tiffany had apparently skipped the meeting, and Crystal was waiting outside. "I know, right?" Beatrice was saying. "She thinks she's so tough now, but she's still the same pathetic—" She trailed off when she spotted Gwen at the computer. "I'll call you back," Beatrice said, ending the phone call. "What are you doing here?" "Using the computer," Gwen said without glancing up from the screen. "It's a computer lab. This lab closes at 4:45. Door was unlocked. Beatrice approached Gwen's workstation. "You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you. I'm on student government. I have permission to be in the building after hours." Gwen finally looked up from the computer screen. "Do you have permission to push people off loading docks?" The question hung in the air between them. Beatrice's expression went through several transformations before settling on feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Beatrice said. "Sure you do." Gwen stood up slowly, favoring her right arm just enough to appear vulnerable. "You, Crystal, and Tiffany. The loading dock, right before Halloween break. You fell. The beam was unstable. After you shoved me." "Prove it." Gwen smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I don't have to prove it. I just have to return the favor." Beatrice took a step backward. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm stating an intention." "You can't touch me. My mother will sue you for everything you have." "For what?" "Having an accident." Beatrice reached for her phone, but Gwen was quicker. She grabbed Beatrice's wrist with her left hand, her strong hand, and applied just enough pressure to make Beatrice drop the phone. "Let go of me," Beatrice demanded, "like you let go of me on the loading dock." Gwen released Beatrice's wrist and stepped back. Beatrice immediately bent to retrieve her phone, which was precisely what Gwen had anticipated she'd do. The instant Beatrice straightened up, Gwen retaliated. It wasn't a reckless swing or an emotional outburst. It was a precise, controlled response, a textbook palm strike delivered with proper technique and precise targeting. Gwen's strike connected with Beatrice's nose, snapping her head back and dropping her to her knees. Beatrice stared up at Gwen in shock, one hand pressed to her face. "You freak! You broke my nose!" "It's not broken," Gwen said calmly. "If it was broken, you wouldn't be talking." Beatrice attempted to stand, but Gwen firmly guided her back down. Not gently, but not with the same calculated force she'd just displayed. "Here's what's going to happen," Gwen said. "You're going to stop. All of it. The comments, the online attacks, the rumor campaigns. You're going to tell your friends to stop. And if I even suspect you're planning any retaliation, I'm going to explain to everyone exactly how I ended up in the parking lot. Nobody will believe you. Maybe not. But they'll definitely believe the security camera." Beatrice's eyes widened. "What security camera?" "The camera in the theater lobby. It doesn't cover the loading dock directly, but it shows the three of you following me toward the dock. and it shows you running away afterward instead of getting help. This was a bluff. Gwen had checked, and the theater lobby camera had been malfunctioning for months. But Beatrice didn't know that. "You're lying," Beatrice said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Want to find out what happens when I show that footage to the police? Because pushing someone off a loading dock isn't bullying, Beatrice. It's assault. Aggravated assault, since I was seriously injured." Gwen knelt down next to Beatrice, keeping her voice low and steady. "My medical bills are almost $40,000. My mother had to take unpaid leave to care for me. We might lose our house because of what you did. So believe me when I tell you that ending your social life is the least I'm willing to do for revenge. I could get you expelled for hitting me. Go ahead. Explain to Principal Thompson why you were alone in a computer lab with the person you've been harassing for months. Explain why you didn't report the attack immediately. Explain why you're not calling the police right now." Beatrice opened and closed her mouth several times without speaking. "Here's the thing about bullies," Gwen continued. "You're only dangerous when people think you're untouchable, but everybody saw me break my arm falling off the loading dock, and everybody's going to see you walking around with a swollen nose. They're going to put two and two together." Gwen stood up and hoisted her backpack over her shoulder. "This ends now, Beatrice. All of it. Or next time, I won't stop at one response." She walked toward the computer lab's exit, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Beatrice, if anything happens to Tiffany because she's feeling guilty about what you did, I'll hold you personally responsible for that too." Gwen left Beatrice sitting on the floor of the computer lab, one hand pressed to her throbbing nose, staring at her phone and trying to decide whether to call for assistance. The next day, Beatrice appeared at school with a bruise on her nose that she claimed came from walking into a glass door. When classmates inquired about it, she changed the subject quickly. She avoided eye contact with Gwen in hallways and didn't speak during the classes they shared. More importantly, the harassment ceased. No more online attacks, no more whispered insults, no more organized exclusion from group projects. Crystal and Tiffany seemed confused by Beatrice's sudden disinterest in tormenting Gwen, but they didn't press for answers. Tiffany actually approached Gwen a week later, stopping by her locker between classes. "I wanted to apologize," Tiffany said quietly, "about what happened before break, on the loading dock." "I know you didn't want to be there," Gwen replied. "That doesn't excuse it." "No, it doesn't, but it makes it forgivable." Tiffany nodded and started to walk away, then turned back. "Beatrice has been acting strange lately, like she's afraid of something." Maybe she finally realized that actions have repercussions. Word spread rapidly through Oakhaven Central's social network that something had shifted in the Gwen-Beatrice dynamic. Students who had previously avoided Gwen out of fear of Beatrice's retaliation began including her in conversations and group activities. Gwen's grades improved as she was no longer expending mental energy on evading harassment tactics. Most importantly, Gwen's mother was able to return to her regular work schedule, which helped stabilize their finances. 4 weeks after the computer lab incident, Gwen was approached by Mr. Henderson, her guidance counselor. "I wanted to check in," Mr. Henderson said during a scheduled meeting. "How are you adjusting since returning from your injury?" "Much better," Gwen said. "No more issues with bullying." "That's wonderful to hear. Any idea what prompted the change?" Gwen considered her response carefully. "I think some people realized that picking on someone with a broken arm wasn't a good look. Well, whatever the reason, I'm glad things have improved. You seem more confident lately." "I learned a lot during my recovery about advocating for myself." "Good for you. Self-advocacy is a valuable skill." If Mr. Henderson suspected there was more to the story, he didn't pry for details. The zero-tolerance policy required documentation of incidents, not explanations for why they ceased occurring. Spring semester passed without major disruption. Beatrice found new ways to occupy her time that didn't involve targeting other students. Crystal and Tiffany gravitated into different social cliques. Gwen joined the debate club and discovered she enjoyed competitive argumentation when it was contained within established rules and guidelines. Her arm healed completely by April, though she continued practicing self-defense techniques with her mother in their attic studio, not because she anticipated needing those skills again, but because she'd learned something essential about the connection between physical capability and mental fortitude. Violence should always be a last resort, Patricia reminded her during one of their training sessions. But knowing you can protect yourself changes how you navigate the world. I know, Gwen said, throwing combinations at the punching bag with both arms now fully functional. I also know that bullies don't usually expect their victims to respond in kind. True, but once you cross that line, there's no turning back. People will always know you're capable of defending yourself. Good. Patricia studied her daughter's face as she continued working the bag. She'd matured considerably in the month since the loading dock incident. The quiet, reserved person who'd attempted to remain invisible had been replaced by someone who understood her own strength and wasn't afraid to utilize it when necessary. Just remember, she said finally, the strongest people are the ones who don't have to prove their strength. I'll remember, Gwen promised, but I'll also remember that sometimes strength is the only language bullies understand. The school year concluded without further confrontation. Beatrice graduated and attended college out of state. Crystal and Tiffany apologized to Gwen during their final year, sincere apologies that acknowledged the damage they'd caused and their complicity in enabling Beatrice's behavior. Gwen graduated with honors and earned a full scholarship to study law at the State University. She intended to become a civil rights attorney, assisting other people in navigating systems that weren't always designed to protect the vulnerable. But she continued training in her mother's attic because some lessons were too crucial to forget. Years later, when Gwen thought about the person who'd been pushed off the loading dock, she felt a mixture of empathy and pride. Empathy for what that person had endured, and pride for how she'd chosen to respond. The broken bones had healed, but the broken trust in institutional protection had led to something more valuable. The understanding that sometimes justice required taking matters into your own hands. Gwen never regretted responding to Beatrice in the computer lab. It had been calculated, proportionate, and effective. More importantly, it had ended the harassment without escalating into something worse. Sometimes the best way to stop a bully was to make them realize that their victim was no longer afraid of them. And sometimes that realization required demonstrating that fear could flow in both directions. The weight of gravity had pulled Gwen off that loading dock and taught her about vulnerability. But gravity also fueled the response that taught Beatrice about accountability. In both instances, what went up eventually came down. The difference was learning to control the trajectory of the fall. Character count, 25,780.